Love this podcast? Support us by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Hit the link in the episode description to support us now. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
Hello, Rolando.
Hello, Sidney. No, damn it. I keep saying Sidney. Damn it. That's where my voice keeps going. Hello, Nicole.
I sound like a smoker. I don't sound like Ghostface at all. I sound like I'm like 80 years old and smoke too much.
Yes, you do sound smokery when you're trying to do your Ghostface voice. Eddie, do you have a Ghostface voice? Can you do one?
No.
He's not even going to try.
Thank you, Eddie.
Hello, Rolando.
Okay. All right.
That's not bad.
Want to play a game?
That's Jigsaw.
Oh.
Well, they technically do play games, yeah.
The trivia game?
The trivia
I guess
games,
that's true.
Yeah.
So Jigsaw ripped off Ghostface is what you guys are telling me.
But isn't this whole idea is that they had these little nods to other horror movies within this movie?
Yeah, but Ghostface came out before Saw.
Yeah, so today we're talking about Scream.
Yeah, Scream from, what year was it?
1996.
Damn, so long ago.
Yeah, a very long time ago, which it's actually kind of astonishing because it feels like only yesterday slasher movies were back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we're talking about Scream and Scream, not Scream 5, it's Scream. Why? Something we'll get into when we start this episode.
By the way, I just wanted to complain real quick, though. I just want to say, what a missed opportunity because they could have done 5 Cream and, you know, it would have like Scream.
Yeah, but then technically the title would be 5 Cream.
No, it'd just be stylized as 5 Cream, but it'd be Scream.
Yeah, technically. But if you were to like search it or in paper, it would be 5 Cream.
That's fine. Whatever.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Rolando.
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals.
An original podcast
about unoriginality. Yeah, no, I just sound like a smoker.
I guess I could have tried to do it as my go. Hang on, maybe. About unoriginality.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That sounded very vocal flary.
Vocal fry at the end?
Vocal fry, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Before we continue with this week's episode, just a reminder that if you enjoy this podcast and you have iTunes, please find us on iTunes, follow us, and give us a ranking, as things like this really do help the podcast's audience base grow.
Yes, it helps other listeners find us, and you know what? We just want to help this community grow. We want our listeners to grow and like learn from us.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling that great. So I might not be my usual self. I'm just going to put that disclaimer out there. Mm-hmm. So I apologize in advance.
And are you not feeling great because you saw Scream and you were just like, oh, it ruined me?
Yeah, no, I definitely blame the new movie for...
No,
I don't actually. Stay tuned to find out how I feel about the new Scream.
But yeah, actually this year we've been starting this thing where we talk about like, you know, things that we've been watching and stuff. So Nicole, have you seen anything interesting in the last week?
Well, no, but I actually read something that I feel like is a perfect tie-in with what we're going to be discussing today. So actually, I want to go last because it is going to be a good segue. Tell me what you guys have been enjoying recently.
All right, Eddie Z.
Netflix, Archive 81. A series just popped up on Netflix. It's like on the top 10 now. It was originally a podcast that I used to listen to, like a drama horror mystery podcast. Very weird, but it was very interesting. And they actually... they did a show, and it was pretty good. I enjoyed it very much.
Archive 81?
Archive 81. It's like a slow burn mystery. It's a tad of horror, but it's more like supernatural.
I was shocked when I saw that James Wan was attached to it.
He does The Conjuring, right?
Yeah, he does like a lot of those horror movies.
Oh, okay.
It was an interesting name to see attached to this show, but here we are. I wonder who would play us when our podcast inevitably becomes a Netflix original TV show, you know?
Yeah, this is true. I wonder if we'll have casting rights, if they'll at least give us that.
I mean, yeah, we'll negotiate those terms, you know?
Oh, I think I see Anthony Ramos in your future.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, all right, fine. I'll take it.
What about you, Rolando?
Oh, isn't that what you just said for me, Anthony Ramos?
No,
Wait, you think Anthony
what
Ramos
have you
for
been
you?
watching, reading, enjoying?
Oh, I thought we were still talking about our imaginary casting. What? Oh, so I did see last week Tick Tick Boom. I loved it. I thought it was great. Not something I would recommend to watch right before a birthday, as I did, but here I am. It's funny. Usually I don't feel like this like fear of like not mortality, right? But like as creators, it's just like what am I creating and stuff, and that's kind of what I was feeling like. That kind of like, oh, I guess I should be out there trying to do work of my own and stuff. So I think that's going to be a goal this year to like stop dreaming it and start doing it again. So stay tuned for that, guys.
And as good as the movie is, it just makes you feel lousy most of the time because it's like, oh my God, I'm older than this character.
Yeah, but I also have more
much
going for myself though than him at 36. So I'm not that.
Wow.
I wasn't that like butthurt about it.
Well, I think he was dead by that time, but he went and created one of the greatest Broadway shows ever, or at least most famous ones.
Yes, Rent.
So I think he has one up on you.
Fine, but I'm just saying by the time the movie came out, I wasn't feeling inferior. But now you're making me feel inferior, so thank you. I guess.
Yes, happy birthday, Rolando.
Thank you.
Well, for me, I've been indulging in this book by one of my favorite authors his name is Grady Hendrix, and he's a huge horror fan. And he wrote a book called The Final Girl Support Group. And if you're a horror movie fan, you know that the term Final Girl refers to movies from women from slasher movies that were the sole survivor at the end of their horror movies. So he envisions a world where all of those movies that came out, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Scream, were based on real life events, and that these are all actual living final girls who form a support group to help each other. And then, of course, they slowly start dying, and it's like, who's attacking us? And it's interesting because reading that and then seeing this film, a lot was similar. And it's interesting because they both kind of play on similar things, mainly, horror fandom. Mm-hmm. And it was just, and also there's a character that's based on Sidney Prescott called Julia Campbell. Campbell being Neve Campbell.
Neve Campbell, okay.
And
Cute.
the envisionment of what would happen to Sidney Prescott, aka Julia Campbell, was that she ended up being wheelchair bound and also just like became like a political activist and stuff. So that's how he envisioned what would happen to Sidney Prescott in her future. So it's interesting seeing the two versions of what two people think would happen to this character. And of course, we've seen what would happen to Sidney Prescott in 4 films cinematically. But who is Sidney Prescott? Well, if you're listening to this episode, I hope you have an idea of who she is because she's the main character of the movie we're talking about and this franchise we're talking about, which is Scream. And in terms of horror movies and the subgenre slasher movies, are you guys a fan of slasher horror movies?
Not so much anymore. I think I was a fan of them when they were coming out, and I was like a teenager Yeah, I was like a teenager. I was still in grammar school for some of those. I was a fan of them, but I think they eventually lost their shine.
Yeah.
And so that's that.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s was definitely like a second heyday for the slasher genre. And really it's all because of Scream. When it comes to horror and the history of horror, around Halloween came out in 1978, Texas Chainsaw came out in 1974, and of course, after the production code ended, horror had a whole boom because now you could portray violence in a way you never had before. So people were just like, they couldn't do it for so long that they just went all fucking out. And they depicted some crazy shit on cinema. Wes Craven's Last House on the Left in particular is just a crazy movie. And of course, you know, the horror genre is anything that's very successful and has so much, you know, soon after it becomes a parody of itself, which is kind of what happened in the 80s, particularly, I think, with Nightmare on Elm Street, which is also Wes Craven. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's a very prolific name within the genre because I feel like he was always at least one step ahead or always had his kind of like his hand on the pulse of the genre and what was happening with it. And in 1994, he made a film. He made the 7th installment in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, which was called New Nightmare, which is more of a standalone film, but that one was a meta horror film, and where Freddy Krueger actually was a character in a movie, and then he kind of came out of the movie and he started terrorizing the people in the cast and the crew of the movie. And it's actually one of the best that were making the movie. Sorry, it's one of the best Nightmare on Elm Street movies. But of course, it was a total flop. And if you think about horror movies, it's hard for anyone to think of a film from like 1990 to 1995 that they would be like, "Oh, this is a great horror movie," because it was kind of a dying genre at that time. They just weren't making money, and people weren't interested in horror. But when Scream came out in 1996, it completely resurrected it. Because Scream is kind of a comedy in some ways. You would say it's a horror comedy. But it also,
I think it's a horror movie. It's a horror movie. It's not a comedy per se. I think it's tongue in cheek. It knows it. It's a movie that knows it's a movie, and it's also very meta in that way.
Yeah. Well, so Scream has a cast of characters that they're all aware that they're kind of cliches that exist within horror genre. You know, the jock and the girlfriend and blah, blah, blah. And they're all kind of talking about their lives as if it were a horror movie or like how it would play out. So it's one of the first, it's very postmodern idea too, to be kind of like aware of your role in a story or in a film or anything. Because at once upon a time, you just told a story. There was no awareness about the story. Now everyone's hyper aware of the fact that they're all just stories and we're all in media land and we have our life and then there's media land. And Scream was definitely, it took it in a really clever and comedic way. And it's interesting because what I like so much about the Scream films is that they're also whodunits. So there's that element to it. So you got you got horror, but you also got some comedy. You got this meta hyper awareness, and then you got a whodunit at the core of it. I mean, how can you go fucking wrong?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Scream, that was the first screenplay, not first written, but the first screenplay to be produced by screenwriter Kevin Williamson, who is kind of prolific in this kind of 90s horror filmmaking, right? Storytelling. Like he did Scream 2. He did I Know What You Did Last Summer. Teaching Mrs. Tingle. Now that was his first script that he ever wrote, interestingly enough. That, kind of a forgettable movie. But he also did he also wrote one of my favorite films of all time, which is The Faculty.
Oh,
which I have spoken about in the past. Yeah. So I love that film. And he's the other big famous thing he's done is he was the writer and executive producer of Dawson's Creek.
Wow, so he just loves the teens.
he loves teens and stuff. He's also out. He's gay.
Oh, just like from Chucky.
Yep, just like Don Mancini, American screenwriter.
And he also did some writing for The Vampire Diaries, it says, and the Scream television show.
Right, yeah, he was involved with the Scream TV show that came out between film 4 and the current one.
Wow.
He's Kevin Williamson is like kind of a big deal. I don't think his name has as much weight as I was going to say Steven Sondheim. Yeah, well, Wes Craven directed, right? But I'm thinking of like other, like Aaron Sorkin.
Oh, writers.
I'm thinking of writers, right? But yeah. I think Kevin Williamson is very much well known in the horror genre, only because of he did like produce some of these like very classic, or he wrote some of these 90s like classic horror films. Whether or not they're good, that's to be decided, right? Because I didn't particularly like Teaching Mrs. Tingle wasn't that good in my opinion. I haven't seen it though since it first came out, so who knows? Maybe my opinion will change on it. But I Know What You Did Last Summer is kind of a hot mess of a movie that makes no sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
And that's another movie. That's actually a franchise that got rebooted. We even covered it because no one talked about the Amazon original series. We were just like, all right, well, let's not waste our time.
So for those of us who might not have seen Scream, the summary of the film is actually, and the plot is quite simple. It centers around a bunch of high schoolers in Woodsboro High School. And our main character, we soon find out, is Sidney Prescott. Sidney Prescott lives alone with her father, and her mother, Maureen Prescott, was murdered before the events of the Scream films.
I think
and that's
a year before.
About a year before. Yeah. And the film starts with the character that Drew Barrymore plays in that famous opening sequence where she's being terrorized on the phone by an unknown assailant who's, quizzing her on chatting her up about scary movies and then quizzing her and then comes in and kills her.
Mm-hmm.
Then we meet all the high school friends. Sidney, her boyfriend Billy, their friends Stu, and the character is played by Rosa McGowan and other people whose names I can't remember. It's really because the focus is really just Sidney, Billy, and Stu.
Sidney, Billy, Stu. Rose McGowan isn't really like an A character. The other major characters being Dewey, who is her best friend's brother. And Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox.
Yes, she's a reporter who comes, and she wrote this whole book about Cotton Weary, who is suspected to be the murderer of Maureen Prescott.
Actually, specifically, she wrote a book that argues that Cotton Leary, the guy who has been convicted of the crime for the murder, is not really the murderer.
That he's innocent.
And that's the beef between Gail Weathers and Sidney Prescott, right? Because Sidney, in her heart of hearts, believes that Cotton committed this murder. And Gail is saying, you're not so sure about that anymore, are you? And then she gets punched in the face.
That's right. Yeah, that was a good drama moment. Yeah. And just like in any good slasher movie, people start dying. And it all kind of builds up into this big house party that these teenagers are throwing, where people at that party get killed one by one, all leading up to Sidney being the last survivor at the party at Stu's house. And it just so happens that the murderer is her, surprise, surprise, and spoiler if you haven't seen it, her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, which is also named after a character in Psycho. If you didn't know that, a little fun fact, a little horror movie trivia.
Wait, who was Loomis?
The boyfriend.
No, who was he in Psycho?
The boyfriend.
No. Oh, Loomis? That was the name of her boyfriend.
So the boyfriend is referencing the boyfriend in Psycho.
Whose boyfriend? Janet.
Marion Cranes, who's played by John Gavin. His name is Sam Loomis.
Okay.
And then when she goes to the Bates Motel, she types in Mrs. Loomis and stuff. So.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So Loomis is also reused in the Halloween movies. The Donald Pleasance character is also named Loomis. So Loomis is a
popular
horror name. Mm-hmm. They're all like nods to one another. So Billy Loomis and Stu Macher are the killers, because there's always two killers in these Scream movies.
And these two are played by Skeet Ulrich and
Matthew Lillard.
Who, talk about performance here.
Yeah,
Matthew Lillard steals the show in this movie.
Yeah. And what was their motive? Well, it turns out that their motive was not only revenge, but horror movies. And this is one of the elements of the movie that made it so unique in 1996. And one of the best selling points, I think, of Scream was that their fascination with the genre and their love for the genre, and like kind of, looking at everyone in their lives as just characters in a horror movie, was something that people hadn't really done before, and made it kind of really deranged and just like, and oddly really fun.
Right.
Because like you said, the performances at the end are just spectacular, especially by Matthew Lillard.
Because Matthew Lillard, he really plays that unhinged character so well, where Matthew Lillard's character, Stu, is way more unhinged than Billy. Because Billy, even though he's arguing that his motivation as to why he's committing these murders is, because movies made me do it. He's using that as an excuse. Ultimately, what he was trying to do was get revenge on Sidney because her mom broke up his family.
Yes.
That's ultimately Billy Loomis's motive behind these crimes is just good old-fashioned revenge.
Yes. Also, we should state that Cotton Leary did not kill Maureen Prescott. Billy Loomis did.
Yes. Cotton Leary was just one of those
intricate web. Yeah.
he was just one of those victims of circumstance here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it, really. Scream kind of sets this thing up and then it closes it. But of course, you have a successful film. I mean, this pretty much catapulted the comeback of slasher movies and made horror movies, like number one in the box office again. Like people weren't really seeing horror movies in the early 90s. And then after this, all they wanted were horror movies. And I feel like horror movies have kind of been on top ever since.
Well, it's a great formula for studios, right? Cheap
productions
and usually a high turnaround. Not just a high turnaround, but like a high profitability, right?
Absolutely.
Because they're so cheap to make.
They are, yeah. They don't need a bunch of like big stars in them, so that like already cut costs right there. And they usually make stars out of people.
True. I mean, in the 90s, the formula was get hot actors to play teenagers.
Yeah.
And that was the formula, right? I Know What You Did Last Summer. You got Sarah Michelle gellar. You have Freddie Prinze Jr., Ryan Phillippe, who was like a god amongst men at his... He still is now.
He was a huge star, yeah.
And Jennifer Love Hewitt.
And Jennifer Love Hewitt, yeah.
And then here you have Neve Campbell, who I think is famous because of Party of Five at this point in her career. Courtney Cox of Friends fame, right? I don't know if David Arquette was famous. I know he's an Arquette.
He's been, but I think this is one of his biggest claim to fames for sure.
But Rose McGowan, Drew Barrymore.
Yeah. Drew Barrymore. It's fucking iconic opening. I will also say that Neve Campbell, the same year she did this, she started in The Craft. So it was a big year for her. And she didn't want to make Scream because she already did like a horror movie and she didn't want to kind of be tied in with the genre.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. And let's be real. Neve Campbell is forever going to be known to this, is just forever going to be associated with the Scream franchise, right? She has yet to turn down a Scream paycheck. Let me just say that much.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because there's all these different final girls in movies. Like another famous one is the Jamie Lee Curtis character, Laurie Strode in the Halloween movies. But they're all really different, and they all are played very differently by their actors. And I feel like Neve Campbell does a great job as Sidney Prescott. Sidney Prescott's kind of like a badass, and she's the one character that you can never ever see dying in a Scream movie. Like the final girl from the first Friday the 13th, spoiler, ends up being murdered in the second Friday the 13th. Heather Langenkamp's characters in Nightmare, she dies, right? So these are characters that they might survive the first film, but when you bring them back, they'll die. But Sidney Prescott will never fucking die. She's like too badass.
That's true.
And that's like the thing that, I mean, maybe it's Neve Campbell, maybe it's just her character or both, but she's just the ultimate final girl badass in that sense. Even though they kind of are trying to make that out of Laurie Strode now. So I think that Neve Campbell can't get away from the Sidney Prescott legacy because Scream spawned all these spawned a franchise and all these sequels. Scream 2, which was as successful as the first film, at least financially and somewhat critically, put her in college. And of course, people start dying and getting attacked there.
Right.
Now, I hadn't rewatched Scream 2 in a while because I saw it last. I watched all the Scream movies last Halloween and I kind of wanted to go into the new one fresh.
Sure.
But I kind of had a memory of Dewey being attacked in Scream 2.
In Scream 2, he is... I feel like in all the Screams, he gets like viciously attacked, but he always survives.
He gets stabbed and...
Yeah.
We always think he may be dead.
So in the second Scream, he is stabbed by one of the killers. I remember he had like... he's like... I'm pretty sure he's looking at Gail when it happens. Because
they're like in that classroom.
Yes. But he survives, right? I think that's the joke with Dewey, right? He's always getting stabbed and he always survives.
Yeah. That's something he brings up in the new film of how many times he's been stabbed and the damage it's cost him. And, the poor freaking girl just wants to go to college and have a normal life. But of course, people around her keep dying. But it's like, well, Billy Loomis is dead. Stumacher is dead. Who the hell could it be? Well, spoiler, in Scream 2, surprise, surprise, it's Billy Loomis's mother.
I know. What a twist.
What a twist, right? Who manipulates one of her fellow classmates, played by Timothy Olyphant, Mickey, to also help her. So again, always two killers for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, actually, I think Scream 2 is not terrible.
No, Scream 2.
I actually enjoyed the beginning.
Works. Yeah.
Yeah, because they introduced the Stab franchise within Scream 2, that they turned the first movie into a movie in Scream 2.
Tori Spelling playing Neve Campbell's character. So in the movie, you'll see like clips of her talking about her role as Sidney. This is a movie. It ends up referencing the Scream film, but like as a film, right? Yes. That's why I think Scream 2 works. I think I like Scream 2. Scream 2 is fun, is good. You have who played her boyfriend? It's Jerry O'Connell.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Was suspect number one, right? Because the boyfriend did it last time. Yeah. And she too was also led to believe that it was his boyfriend, but it turned out to be his best friend.
Oh, look at that. Mm-hmm. Well, so Scream 2 came out right after Scream 1, right? 1996, Scream 2, 1997. In 1998, a bunch of bad things happened, okay? In 1998, a 16-year-old boy with his 14-year-old cousin stabbed his own mother. The 16-year-old stabbed his own mother 45 times, killing her. And it's known as the Scream murders because the boys claim that they were inspired by the Scream movies, and they confessed to needing the money from killing her to purchasing Ghostface costumes and a voice changer and, to continue killing.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a defense put on by the lawyers, but okay.
Well, maybe. But they definitely were into the movie. Which, of course, you can't always blame the movie, but at the same time, there was influence there. There was allegedly. In 1999, 13-year-old Ashley Murray was stabbed multiple times before being left for dead by a 14 and 15-year-old boy. And they also they had watched Scream before the attack, and they wore Ghostface masks. The big thing that happened, though, was in 1999, Columbine happened. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people blamed movies like Scream because, again, in the 90s, you weren't seeing this kind of violence so mainstream, and then Scream comes out and it's such a success, and it's it kind of influences these quote unquote, and I should put influences in quotation marks, copycat murders. So of course this affects the franchise significantly when they go to make Scream 3. And because of it, they had to make Scream 3 more of a comedy and less violent because there was just too much going on in the world that they couldn't continue to make the movies on the same caliber that they were. Mm-hmm. And it was actually kind of like the perfect time for them to end the franchise. And they always said they intended it to be just a trilogy, and that was it.
Right. So that was always the intention. And I think Scream 3 was also one of those movies that they had multiple scripts, so even the cast themselves supposedly didn't know what the real ending was because there were multiple endings, and somehow, some way, they ended up with the wackest ending.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this one wasn't written by Kevin Williamson; it was written by Aaron Kruger,
and it shows because that ending made no sense. I remember. Do you remember? Did you ever get a chance to see any of the Scream films in theaters?
Yes, Scream 3 was the first of the Scream films that I saw in theaters. Same. I was 12, so...
Uh-huh. Yeah. Same. So that's the first one that I got to see in theater. I think I was 13. I'm a year older than you, right?
Yeah, you're a year older than me.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. So that tracks. I'm pretty sure I was 13. We all went. We were in 8th grade. We were so excited to see Scream. And at this point, I loved the franchise. And I was just I was so excited to see. It's what's going to happen? And I would remember being let down. I'm just this made no sense.
Yeah, it was kind of wacky.
A half brother who shows up out of nowhere.
Yeah, and apparently was the reason that Billy Loomis got the motivation to kill Maureen and Sidney, because he videotaped his mother and then showed it to Billy Loomis. Mm-hmm. a little weird.
Yeah,
But,
it was,
you
and it
know.
takes place in Hollywood, right? Like it takes place on a movie set most of the film.
Yeah,
The
Stab
set of
3.
Stab, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I remember, the only thing I remember from the movie theater is laughing at Parker Posey because I think she's very funny.
Parker Posey
That's it.
is good though. Parker Posey,
She's
but
great, yeah.
the movie, Scream 3, huge letdown. Which is a Scream that had the terrible bangs for Courtney Cox. I think there was Scream 2.
Yeah, I think it was Scream 2. Yeah.
But those bangs will forever live in infamy.
Yeah, she'll never let that die.
No, I don't think you just can't. There's no possible way you could. But I guess turning our attention back to Scream, right? Like the original one. When you first saw it, right? Like, what did you think of it when you first saw it?
Well, when I first saw it, I was really young. And I was watching other slasher movies. I remember watching I Know What You Did Last Summer and getting it from Blockbuster Video and stuff. And I wanted to watch these movies because they were cool. But
Right.
even when I was younger, horror wasn't the genre that I was always gravitating to. So I do remember kind of being scared because I was very young. I must have been only 10 or something. But I do remember liking it more than most of the other ones. And I do think when I got older, I identified the fact that it was a whodunit at the core of it. And that's what I gravitate towards it as an adult, is that it's actually this big murder mystery. And that most of the films are big murder mysteries. Because, I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's definitely that guy they killed somehow. It's not like, oh, is it one of them? No, it's that guy.
Oh.
In other slasher movies, like, that there's a certain person that's after them. Like,
Right.
that the guy from Texas Chainsaw, Leatherface, Michael
Leatherface.
Myers is killing everybody. Jason is. But in Scream, it's always one of them, right? Who's donning the ghost face. And that, I think, is what makes it one of the most unique components of it. So when I first saw it, though, it scared me, but I still enjoyed it because I wanted to be cool. What about you?
No, yeah. I think the first time I saw it was with my mom because she loves horror movies. And I think it was on pay-per-view. We had a hot cable box, right? So it would just play on infinite loop,
wow.
the pay-per-view thing. But I remember watching it with mom and I loved it. I think a lot of obviously the meta context of it really went over my head as a kid. But when I first saw this movie, I was like, oh, this movie is cool. And I think part of it was, for me, the idea when like it's revealed that not only was it Billy Loomis, but it was also his friend. There were two killers. I mean, my mind was blown. It's just like, oh my God, there were two killers the whole time. And Eddie, you and I have talked about this, right? Like this is probably one of the, at least on first watch as a young person, was like the most shocking reveal to me. Eddie, anything you want to chime in?
It was literally, I can remember that moment having a paradigm shift of how I perceived horror movies, therefore. And like I couldn't imagine two killers until that moment. Like, oh, this possibility, everything was always one psychopath, only one person with this darkness and this like need for vengeance for whatever reason. But the thing of it being a combination of these two people being the killers, and I was just like mind blown at that moment watching this movie in the theater. It's like two. I just kept on saying. I remember just saying to my friends, two? Like two? Can you believe two?
You saw it in theaters?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Look at that. How was that? Is that like a big movie-going experience for you?
Yeah. Yes, because I was, as a little kid, always into horror movies, always inappropriate age watching horror movies. So seeing like The Exorcist when I was like 11, when they like, that wasn't a good idea. But
Yeah, seriously. Me
yeah.
too.
But yeah, so that was like mind blowing. And fun fact
Nice.
about Courtney Cox and her bangs. So those were clip-ons.
Wow,
Those
that's even
bangs were not
worse, I
her
think.
real bangs. They were like her real hair. They were clip-ons. And there was, according to her, there was only one set of those bangs.
Uh-huh.
And her idea was always to kind of have a new look for each of the movies. But what they did was they clipped the bangs not in the right spot on her head.
Right.
And then they decided to trim them.
Yeah,
And it created this crazy look. So
I mean, I'm looking at
Worst
photos.
look, she said.
Yeah, I think there's just a famous tweet that she responded to, which was like, oh, hang on, Courtney Cox Banks tweet, in which it is, if you ever feel like shit, just remember Courtney Cox's hair in Scream 3. It was a Scream 3. I could have sworn it was Scream. Oh, right. Scream 3, she had nicer hair. Scream 2, she had nicer hair. Just remember her hair in Scream 3. David Arquette said, I had to take the fall for this. I suggested a Betty Page look. It just didn't work. I take full responsibility. Oh, so David Arquette. What a hero here.
Wow. Getting all of that off of her.
They were married
That's
for 14
nice.
years. Wow.
Yeah, they were married a long time. I'm still upset that they have broken up. And we'll talk about it, I guess, with Scream, the new one. But it hurts.
Well, we got to talk about Scream 4.
Oh, I never saw Scream 4.
Oh.
Did you see Scream 4?
I did, yeah.
Oh, you watched it for the podcast?
No, I last year I watched all the Scream movies. My girlfriend at the time was super into Scream, and so for Horror Movie Month we watched them all.
No, for my due diligence, I tried to see the Scream TV show.
Oh,
Yeah, that remake.
I think Scream 4 might be a little bit more important for this.
I think
film.
for this film, probably. I mean, the Scream. I was shocked to learn though that Scream TV. Well, go ahead. Scream 4 came out before the Scream TV show, so tell me about it.
So pretty much, it's 15 years since the Woodsboro massacre, and of course, people start dying, and the Ghostface reappears. So Sidney Prescott, she's like a novelist. She writes self-help books and all this stuff, and she comes back, and she actually ends up reconnecting, or at least visiting her cousin, played by Jill Roberts, and she's dealing with like being dumped with her boyfriend, blah blah blah. Okay, and pretty much it all turns out to be that the new Ghostface is Who do you think? I said Jill Roberts because the name of her character is Jill Roberts. It's played by Emma Roberts. It's her. She's the Ghostface.
Emma Roberts.
She's Sidney's
our first
cousin is
female killer.
Our first female killer.
Well, technically, I guess Billy's mom, but like I don't think she actually ever killed anyone in the Ghostface.
Well, yeah, but Charles Manson, even though he never killed anyone, was very much responsible for making people kill people.
Okay, sure. Yes.
So I don't know why I had to defend Billy Loomis's mother there. But,
I don't know either, but all right.
But yeah, so she what's her motive is pretty much, she's jealous and she wants the fame that Sidney had because she was the sole survivor of being the murders, of surviving the murders and stuff. So Scream 4 is interesting, but it's not like, oh wow, we needed this kind of a thing.
Right.
Because they say that Scream was always supposed to be a trilogy. But of course, the allure of a new film is never going to turn anyone away.
Of course, including Wes Craven himself.
Kevin Williamson himself, everybody back. And this was like something that people were really excited for. And it just didn't get the attention that they were hoping for. Yeah,
it made a profit, but it didn't wow enough to the point where I think even the Weinstein Company, they were initially planning number 4 to kick off another trilogy. However, because of its lackluster performance, it kind of put a pause on it. Kevin Williamson himself has been quoted as saying, "I'm done with Scream now." And he kind of was done with the project after, now it wasn't a flop, right? It made money, but it just wasn't a big performer, not as big as they were hoping for it to be. And actually part of the reason, because of Scream 4 is it wasn't a flop, but because of its lackluster performance is kind of the reason how Scream got developed into a TV show by Viacom for MTV for the first 2 seasons and then VH1 for the 3rd season. And it kind of reimagines Scream, but instead of a film, it takes a TV show format. For the podcast, try to watch a few episodes of this. I didn't care for it. I didn't think it was good. It doesn't take place in Woodsboro. It takes place at some new town called Lakeview. It does start off, though, you might like this. It does start off with 2 lesbians being caught making out and then turning into an internet sensation of bullying in the town, which I guess kicks off the crime spree. But the season the first season of Scream works as a whodunit, right? Similar to the film, the main character is trying to figure out, like, all right, who is committing all these awful murders in town while taking place in a high school. Bella Thorne is in it. I didn't like it, but the show was successful enough to have 3 seasons. So who am I to judge? It was packaged as a new production for, like, I guess that the Zoomers, right? That generation. I don't know who's watching MTV though. So, like, I don't know who. Honestly, I don't know who it was for, to be quite honest. But
yeah, true.
It found 3 seasons worth of content, and eventually, because of the whole Weinstein debacle.
Yeah.
The rights to Scream fell from the Weinstein Company. It ended up going to Spyglass Media Group. And they are the people who, the big films, I think, are like The Sixth Sense, The Happening, and that Footloose remake, right? Those are some of the movies that they have come up with. And as soon as the rights came onto that company, they greenlit the film. And they tapped Kevin Williamson to come back. He didn't want to write, but he did serve as a producer. And he promised people that this was not going to be a reboot, right? They were going to continue the franchise. So that's where we started hearing talks about this. And Scream 5 is what we got out of it. So Scream 5 is directed by Matt Bettinelli. I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong. And Tyler Gillett. Their big movie is Ready or Not. Have you seen this?
Ready or Not is the name of the movie?
That's the name of the movie.
I've not seen it.
Eddie, do you remember Ready or Not?
No.
Ready or Not is a movie about the young lady who gets married to the rich family, and then they play their game.
Oh, that's the one I chose for movie night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the movies you picked for movie night. That's those two who directed that film directed this one. And the people who wrote Scream, the new one, are also the same writing team of the movie Ready or Not. So basically, my guess is that Spyglass said, it's just like, ooh, you know what? This movie is successful. It's loved by critics. Fans love it. Why don't you guys take over the Scream franchise? And here we are,
Wow.
And this is actually the first movie not to be directed by Wes Craven, the first Scream film not to be directed by Wes. And obviously because Wes Craven passed away. How long ago did he pass away? It's been what, like...
Wasn't it 2014?
Was it that long ago? Jeez.
I think it might have been, yeah.
I thought it was sooner, like more recent. But yeah, so let me see if there's anything else. Oh, yeah. Interesting facts here. This movie had a budget of $24 million. 2015 he died. Okay. This film had a budget of $24 million, right? And its opening weekend, it brought in $30 million. Those are big numbers for a January release because January releases are traditionally known to not do well.
Yeah.
And I was shocked that, like, when we were in theaters, like, we went on a Tuesday, and when we came out, like, that theater was almost packed.
Yeah, it's selling out. It kicked Spider-Man off of number 1.
Mm-hmm. Well, one movie had to do, right?
Yeah, and, like, I guess Scream 5 was the one to do it. And yeah, I mean, when I went and saw it, it was a pretty massive theater. I also saw it on a Tuesday, but I think I had like 10 other people with me, which at this point, at least in my theater, is like a big theater. That's like practically sold out for me. So it's interesting because people are seeing this movie. I wonder if, again, Scream 4 didn't do so bad, but I wonder if it had as much of like people just really want to go and see this movie as much as they wanted to go see Scream 4. You know what I mean?
Do you think it was... do you think it was like the mark? There was a lot more marketing here than I remember for Scream 4.
Yeah.
I was getting this movie pitched to me a lot on like YouTube ads, Twitter, not Twitter, TikTok, even Instagram, right? Like I was seeing it a lot to the point where I was just like, oh, I do want to see this. And maybe the whole appeal of like Scream made people think it was going to be a reboot or something.
Maybe, yeah, because they did call it Scream, and this is like in a world where now we have the new Halloween that was retconned, and other horror movies and all. And now, 2011 when Scream 4 came out, they weren't doing the amount of reboots, remakes, and revivals that they are now.
Right.
So I think people are just expecting really, really good remake, reboots, or revivals, and they're going to the theater to see it more. I also remember people weren't that happy about Emma Roberts in Scream 4 for some reason. They were hating on her in that casting.
Emma Roberts is like easy to hate, though.
I think so. And she was like a big name star, which was something that the Scream movies never really had.
Oh, you think she's a big name star?
Well, like comparatively to like the fact that the first Scream movie made stars out of those actors.
What are you talking about? Courtney Cox was already famous from Friends.
Yeah, but she wasn't like, she was TV famous.
Oh,
There's a
that's true.
difference.
There was
and
a
that
difference
was
back
the
then.
difference back then. Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
So I don't know.
I
That
can
to
agree
me.
with that. All right.
And I think the fact that there is a complete lack of famous people other than Neve Campbell, David Arquette, and Courtney Cox in this new one, I think also is that just works better for horror movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to see big name people that you like know a lot of, like, you know what their fucking house looks like in a horror movie. And sometimes in movies in general. But, cause also like, where the hell is Emma Roberts?
Do we need?
Where has she been?
Okay, well,
know.
you saw Scream 4. Like, is there any big takeaways from Scream 4 that I should have known coming into this one? Because I was just like, I don't really feel like seeing Scream 4. I just like went right into Scream 5. Scream.
Yeah.
Because based off of the title, I just assumed it was going to be like, I didn't need to know 4. Just based off of the title
I think
alone.
this new film references every previous Ghostface before it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I guess you should know that the last Ghostface was her cousin, and that I guess the only other thing was that the sheriff that's in this new film was also in Scream 4.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't know Emma Roberts was related to Eric Roberts.
Yeah, and Julia
wait,
Roberts too.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's her aunt.
Oh, so isn't that called nepotism? I know her from the American Horror Story franchise. I don't really know her from anything else. That's why I don't think she's that famous.
What do you mean? She's done so many been a child actress.
What?
Yes.
Oh. I
I
had
think
never seen her in
also
anything.
did like a Nancy Drew thing.
Oh, you're right. Actually, we did consider covering a Nancy Drew episode, but we never followed through with
did.
that. And she
Yeah.
would have been the one that wasn't. You're right, Eddie. Fine. All right. I guess she does. All right.
Drew.
I wouldn't call her.
Also Dog, Valentine's Day. It's kind of a funny story. The Art of Getting By.
All right. All right. She has an IMDb page.
Yeah, that's something. But yeah, so tell us the story about this new Scream, Rolando.
New Scream takes. Oh, spoiler alert, guys! We're gonna get into this, but I don't think there's any way of getting around this without spoiling it. But
Yeah.
New Scream takes place in Woodsboro. We wake up to find a ethnically ambiguous young girl being tormented by the Ghostface. She gets stabbed a lot, but somehow survives. I don't know how, but she survives. This skinny little thing. And her sister, when she finds out, she immediately goes back to town. And she confesses to her sister that this is all her fault because she is, the illegitimate daughter of Billy Loomis. Now, I have issues with this, but we can get into that later. But just let's put a pin on that. I do have issues with that.
Billy Loomis, yeah.
That plot point there. Anyway, and little by little, more and more murders start happening. And obviously, the first point of action is for our main character, Sue. Is her name Sue? Sam. Our main character, Sam, is to reach out to Dewey and ask for his help. And Dewey was just like, hell fucking no. I've been stabbed so many times. Your best bet is your boyfriend. He's probably the one who did it. And also look within the friend group. Obviously, it's one of them. And Sam is all like, no way, it's not him. But I'm doing a bad job of giving this review because I'm going by scene here. But basically, murders start happening again. And what we find out is that whoever is committing these murders is murdering characters in this new film who are somehow, some way related to legacy characters of the original or of the original franchise. So these characters who are dying, they are all somehow related to one of the characters in the past. And it all culminates at a house party where that's taking place in Billy Loomis. Is it Billy Loomis's or was it Stu's house? Whose house was it?
Stu's house.
It was Stu's house. All right. So it all culminates in Stu's house, which was the setting of the original ending for the first Scream. And that's where we find out who the killers are. So again, stop listening if you don't want the spoilers, but the killers are Sam's boyfriend, played by
Jack Quaid.
Jack Quaid, thank you, Meg Ryan, and Dennis Quaid's son
From The Boys.
and Amber, who was Sam's sister's best friend, who hated Sam, but I don't know. We're finding out that she was also a murderer, and the two met on a message board on Reddit. And lesson here is don't trust people on Reddit.
Yeah.
And be careful with very devoted fans.
Yeah, I mean,
The whole thing
Yeah.
is that these were fans and they wanted.
it's about that. It's about toxic
motive-
fan bases.
Yes, the motive was because the Stab franchise was getting
Derailed.
worse and worse.
Yeah.
And they needed something real to happen to influence the future of the Stab movies to make sure that it would be a great franchise again.
Exactly. So they were trying to commit these murders, and they were trying to make it look that like Sidney, who returned, obviously, because Sidney just can't keep away from these. She heard murder, was warned, stay away. What does she do? She's just like, no, I'm running into the thick of it.
Yeah.
And even Sidney with a gun turns out is no match for Ghostface Killer.
Seriously. Yeah. I do love though that she came back and it did have like kind of the same thing with Laurie Strode where it's like a badass and it's just like, let's just get the guns out. I don't know. Is she fake? Is this bait? Is she real? And if not, I'm going to shoot her in the fucking face. I love that version of Sidney Prescott. I
do
kinda
too.
all about it.
But my main issue here is just like they couldn't pick a lane with her, because when Amber comes out of the house for the first time, she's like, help me, the killer. She pulls out the gun. She's like, what do you think? Nah, it's definitely a trap. She shoots.
Yeah.
But this girl shoots like a fucking Star Trooper from Star Wars, because she shot like 3 times and missed all 3. I'm just like, girl, how long have you had with that gun? I know you've been practicing with that gun since Scream 3, because in Scream 3 we find out that she had a gun.
Yeah, this is true.
So it's just like, you are a terrible shot, girl.
Yeah, there are so many times too where like things just seemed to be going it for Sidney and she'd take it and it just wasn't the case. She kept getting like caught and it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is kind of embarrassing for Sidney and Gail.
Gail, poor Gail. I mean, Dewey gets stabbed all the time. Gail gets shot in every movie.
Yes,
And
she
usually
does.
in the same spot. Like the reason she has no kids has to be because she's been shot in the womb so many times in this franchise.
Yeah. So this, like in every movie, it's a classic whodunit, right? Mm-hmm. But how much of it do you feel like was a successful whodunit? Because I think that what makes them good is whether or not the whodunit aspect is successful. Did you at all foresee the killers?
Okay, I called it from the get-go that it was going to be Amber. I did.
Yeah, you know what? I had feelings about Amber too. And I also, from like the moment we saw the boyfriend, I was like, oh, he's the killer. He doesn't know the stab movies. That's bullshit.
The boyfriend, the boyfriend's the one that threw me off, because I'm like, no, that'd be too similar. Right. And then I think so. Props here to Jack Quaid's performance here, because he actually kept performing it in a way to keep throwing me off. Specifically, I think my favorite movie in the film comes when Neve Campbell, Sidney, is going to each door and just shooting it. Right. Mm-hmm. And she shoots him and she's like, I give you a warning. What were you doing? He's like, you were just shooting. What am I going to do? And I was just it was a point of comedy that I think it felt the most like the original Scream. I was laughing hysterically at this whole situation. Mind you, there's murders happening. So yeah, no, Jack Quaid, I think he gave a strong performance and he kept throwing me off, because I sometimes suspected him, sometimes didn't, sometimes did, sometimes didn't. I think by the end, when the reveal happens, I feel like I should have realized it as soon as the hospital scene happened, because he was not killed. He wasn't killed, right? Like Ghostface had the opportunity to kill him, but didn't. Was it because he wasn't related to the original franchise? Maybe, but we come to find out it's because he was in on it. But that should have been the first clue. I also do have issues with the hospital scene, so.
Yeah, well, sometimes these films don't hold up to intense scrutiny, I should say. But at the same time, like, in theory, if it works, that's enough for me, because it is also just like a horror movie.
Are you talking, wait, when you're saying the who behind it?
Like the how they did it, how did they get there? You know, what time did they get there? That kind of stuff. You know.
I mean, for me, I was mostly pissed off that like Dewey died in a very stupid way.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, because Dewey should not have gone back. He knows better. He should have known better than to go back. First of all, Dewey also should have known better to not, to not shoot the head right from the get-go. Dewey would have.
Yeah.
Dewey would have shot from the head right from the get-go after the ghost face is like, you know, thrown up against the wall. Dewey would not have gone to the elevator and then gone back to die. It felt a little contrived. I was a little upset about it. I didn't mind that Dewey dies. It's just how they went about it that I was kind of like, I don't know. It felt cheap.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't feel that way. But I also was like, but is he dead this time?
Well,
like,
yeah, they did fake us out because
they made it pretty clear that he could not survive that.
I mean, they did, but also I was half expecting when like they were rolling out the stretcher, he was gonna come out, but it's just like, oh my god, Gail and Dewey are reunited again. But no, he died. We saw his name tag in the body bag.
I guess, yeah. Although a freaking future,
you see Dewey.
You see the name tag, but you don't see the body in the body bag. So technically, future films could use that because he was in a hospital too, so they could just like put him into a room and save him.
You know what? This is fine. You're right.
This is horror movie logic I'm applying here.
You're not wrong on this. But man, watching the chemistry though I do want to point this out. The chemistry between David Arquette and Courtney Cox is still pretty strong, even after this is worse, because I was so heartbroken after watching this movie. Just like, why are they not together? Like, how could these two lovebirds just not make it work? I was so sad.
Yeah, no, the real love that they have for one another plays through their characters for sure.
I actually thought that the best scene, like the scene I felt real, was the scene between them two when
they first get reunited.
Yeah, when they get reunited, and they're talking about how their marriage ended, like him leaving, in the middle of the night, because he felt like he couldn't hack it, in her life, and I was like, wow, this is a really good moment here. Like I'm feeling for this couple here, I'm feeling, and I just want to get an idea how big is Woodsboro.
Oh, that means
how big is Woodsboro for the cops not to get there in time when the sheriff, the chief, right? The chief or the sheriff? Sheriff calls, there's something happening in my house, right? How big is it that they leave that Dewey and the oldest and Sam leave in the car in the day, but get to the hospital when it's like nighttime?
Or more to the point, yeah.
And then also, how is it possible that a hospital is empty?
Yeah.
Okay? Because even if you're covering... So, having them travel that time, so that town must be big enough that hospital would not be empty. That floor is so ridiculous.
I think you guys missed something, though, because they said they were going to put her on a private floor so that there wasn't going to be anyone but the guy who was guarding her. That's why when she saw that the guy who was guarding her wasn't there.
Still, there would be people walking. I just feel like...
this girl was stabbed. There's no way that she's going to be on a private floor by herself.
Yeah, the floor was big.
I just want to also point out how hilarious it is that this little thing keeps getting attacked multiple times. But like by the end, she's still walking around like no big deal with her crutches. I'm just like, girl, you literally were just stabbed like in the back.
Yes.
You should be dead.
She's the reverse Drew Barrymore character.
Yeah.
Right? Because you stab her, she's still not dying. Okay, but what I do love is the fight back that I did see in this movie. Like, it's like you may stab me once, you may stab me twice, but I'm gonna still be kicking your ass to the very end.
Yeah, the girls fought back in this one a lot.
Yeah. Well, actually, the one thing that I noticed about this movie was how many people survived, right? So Tara survives, Sam survives, the twins survive.
The Meeker twins.
Oh, the twins. Yeah, I actually liked the twins. I thought I liked them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were good. And so
okay.
They definitely provided the whole, I didn't really care for them.
Really?
I think their purpose was to make the audience think that they were the killers because they were just such horror movie fans, but you knew that they would never be the killers and that they were just also comic relief. And it was fine.
I thought they were cute comic relief.
that whole
The
that
basement
Mindy
scene?
does with the REQUEL speech and saying that Scream was a requel. Do you think that this new Scream is just that? Is it a requel? Did they sell you on that idea?
Actually, I think they did, because what we found out in this movie, and you can tell me this is true, but was Scream 4 really heavily focused on Neve Campbell? Was she like the main character?
Yeah,
Okay.
she came back. Yeah.
In this one, Neve Campbell is not the main character. This
not.
Sam is the main character. So this is, I think, this then becomes the first Scream film where our main protagonist is not Sidney Prescott. And to, at least in my opinion, I think it shows that, okay, you can make a movie that's Scream that is not Sidney Prescott because of her connection to Billy Loomis. I'm not crazy about her connection with Billy Loomis, but what we're seeing is just like, yeah, it works as a requel because they basically set up. It's just like, we can now live in a world where it's not just Sidney Prescott as the main character.
Interesting. And I guess it would have made it more interesting if Sam indeed was the killer. They were like, oh, well, in terms of horror movie franchise, you have to be the killer. Did anyone at any point think Sam was the killer?
No, I don't think I did.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I don't think Vanessa from In the Heights was going to be the killer.
Yes, Vanessa from In the Heights. So I guess we should talk about Sam and her relationship with her father, who, by the way, that is indeed Skeet Ulrich coming back to play Billy Loomis.
Yes, just heavily CGI'd.
Heavily CGI'd.
Oh,
I mean,
very, very
basically,
heavily.
they just took a picture of him when he was a kid. That's
Yeah.
it. Because
Just
he's a grown-ass man. Still kind of a hottie, but he's a grown-ass man on Riverdale.
Yeah, Skeet Ulrich is seeing him on Riverdale, he could still definitely get it because
The
he's
only
still
character
very, very
ever seen
handsome.
who became like the main criminal in Riverdale becomes the sheriff of Riverdale. I mean, what a character
Arc, yeah.
for that guy.
But so he reprised his role as Billy Loomis, and it was interesting to see. I wasn't crazy about. So, all right, here's my beef. I don't know. It makes no sense that she is the illegitimate son because, like, mathematically, I don't think it makes sense, right? Because she's 23, right? She's like 5 years older than this girl who is now 8. I think she's like 16, 17. So she's like 21, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, though, it's just like Billy. The implication here is that Billy was just banging random chicks while he was plotting murdering Sidney. It just doesn't. I don't think he had the time.
What? No.
He was busy killing people. What time do you have to also?
time.
He
You
was.
find time. You
Him
find time.
and Stu were busy plotting like
You'll be
a
amazed.
murder. Not just a
amazed.
murder, right? Because they also murdered Sidney's mom. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't. When did he have the time to also knock up some chick?
You have time. I mean,
have
also,
time.
all it really takes is one time.
Yeah.
No, because according to the diary, she was madly in love with him. They had a relationship. It just didn't. It didn't line up. According to Sam in the diaries, like it was like a relationship. It wasn't like just a one night thing.
I don't know. I think I could see there having time. I mean, he's not killing people every second of his day, and plus there's a second killer, so he's not killing them single-handedly.
So in other words, he was able to delegate with his partner.
Yeah.
And so that the plan is just like,
yeah.
all right, you go kill.
Yeah.
I have some punani to get into tonight. Like,
Yeah,
is that how they
exactly.
divided the work?
I'm fake in love with Sidney Prescott, but I'm really in love with the carpenter mom. Mm-hmm. So
I don't know. I had issues with that. I'm just like,
I mean, yeah.
I
To
He's-
tell you the truth,
he's still a
when
high school
it came up-
student.
when it came up, I rolled my eyes. I was like, really? And like I was convinced it was a different actor at first because his face was just so perfect
Oh,
that I was like, like what guy are they getting to play this? I don't know. I mean, it didn't really add anything for me in terms of the Sam character. Does it make her more like, oh, well, I'm the daughter of a serial killer, so I must have the urge to kill or something. Like,
Yeah.
that wasn't really explored.
it was treading.
It was just this
Dexter.
guilty conscience that came in like 3 scenes.
Well, not. I mean, at the end we saw Billy Loomis give her
That's the only time that we actually really saw that play into the plot where she brutally murders him. But it's like satisfying to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also like kind of weird that they took this like villain and they made him almost into like a hero.
Not a hero, her spirit guide, I guess.
Her spirit guide.
I don't know.
Which was kind of weird.
I thought it was weird. I think they were treading a Dexter storyline here a little bit almost, and I was just like, this is silly because it's so Billy Loomis, and it's just like what, like Billy Loomis gave like his nod of approval at the end of the movie to her that she saw the reflection of just like what. No, what am I supposed to take away from this? Because she's. Yeah, what is happening? It was a little confusing at the end.
At the same time, too, I'm not seeing that this is the spirit or the ghost of her father guiding her in her life.
That's true.
Right? I'm just thinking this is a manifestation of her own personality or consciousness, representing her dad and what she thinks her dad is. And also dealing with the dark side that she has created about herself. Like saying, like, if I'm from a serial killer, what does it say about me and who I am or potentially can become? But this is the play here. It's what I found interesting was he said this earlier, she's trying to figure out how to survive this. And this representation of her father in her head is saying, use
this, the force.
Use this darkness that you feel you have against the killer.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to use this and that opportunity when she gets to see more. I'm putting in quotes here, air quotes here, but get to see more of the situation by tapping into her darkness and that rage, and it was very satisfying that kill because it was the follow through that I always scream at. It's like if you're gonna bring the killer down, follow through. You need a second hit. You need to make sure that person is not gonna get up, and she made sure.
Yeah,
absolutely sure. And that satisfying moment when he looks at her and she looks at him and she slashes his throat. It's like taking her power back.
Yeah, too. It was interesting because he was like, "What about my ending?" And then what did she say to that?
Don't fuck with a serial killer's daughter.
That's, what I really was hoping she was going to say was, I like my ending better. Wouldn't that have been a better line?
Oh, that would have been a better line than.
But
than
just
that.
like throwing the Billy Loomis thing in, she had to say that or something.
What she said is like, "Don't fuck with a serial killer's daughter." It was like the cringiest line in the whole movie. I was just like,
I didn't really.
Kevin Williamson would never. He just would never.
Yeah, it's like, I think my line is definitely better. But also, again, like, I think that they established that that's what they were going for. I didn't really feel like they fell through with that because there was just so much going on and they had to establish so many other things that him kind of showing up once or twice in her rearview mirror just, I don't know, it wasn't enough for me to really feel like this character had this huge thing going on.
And then I'm wondering if this is something that, if there is a continuation that will play out too. Like her maybe taking on some weird Dexter role of another series of killers and her having to hunt down the killer and her father being that
the guiding spirit.
Yeah.
Her dark passenger. I hope that that's not the route the show goes, because if there's a spinoff that I want to see, I want to see Sidney Prescott and Gail Weathers solve crime together at their age. That's what I want to see, to be honest, because again, their chemistry in the house in the last act, again, another one that's just electrifying. Like, you think they would have lost it by now, but I think their banter while they're being held hostage by these two murderers that are younger than them, like, they're just like, they feel so exhausted, and I loved it. It was just such a funny dynamic between the two, because like they're just like, even when I think when they're gonna do the final kill, it's just like, do you want to do this? I'll do it. Fine. I'll
let you have this one. Yeah, and it was nice because they kind of had that like combative relationship in the other films. Mm-hmm. So it's like you see the 20 plus years that they have between them, and they're just able to put all of that aside them. And like Gail's like, "Oh, this is all my fault because I wrote that book," and Sidney's like, "No, it's not. It's fucking Billy's fault for killing people." Or I thought she was gonna be like, "No, it's my mom's fault for being a whore" or something. But it's like, it's like them having all of that, in their relationship, just kind of like, this is what fucking matters now, and we're gonna stick together and we're gonna get this shit done. We're gonna kill some assholes. Yeah, so that was nice too.
It was. So yeah, but no, I hope that I don't know where the franchise goes from here. To be honest, it's an interesting. It's interesting because, like I said, this is the first franchise where Sidney is not the main character. She's not the star. And
Wes Craven did not direct it.
Wes Craven didn't direct
this is the first for a few reasons.
Yeah. And I think the other main thing that we should also realize is just like critically, like fans and critics like this movie, right?
They do, yes.
So I'm kind of mixed on it. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. Actually, I liked it a lot. Didn't love it though. But it was a solid performance for the first film not directed by Wes Craven, I think. And I think the meta factor here in this film worked a lot better than what we saw like a couple of weeks ago with The Matrix, right? Because
absolutely.
Because this franchise was kind of built on that meta aspect, and here, you know, I that whole spiel about requels. It's just like, that's literally what our podcast has been about, you know? The only thing is we didn't have a name for it. So I guess our new name is Remakes, Reboots, Revivals, and Requels.
And Requels, yeah. And retcons. You know, I thought that I mentioned that I read that book, The Final Girl Support Group. And the one, I feel like either they're friends or they read each other's works or something, because they were so similar in the fact that they were really based on toxic fandoms, and how these people who become so obsessed to the point where the copycat murders happen, just like in real fucking life, they always happen in these movies and in these stories, that people are so obsessed with the culture of these killings and these horror movies that they want to become part of that legacy themselves, right? And that's the thing, like a key line was, let them die in anonymity. Did I say that word? Anonymity. Because what these people fucking want is the legacy. You know, they want to be like, they want to die forever. Young, and like they want to be fucking Achilles, but murderous Achilles. Well, actually, Achilles was a huge murderer. So,
but it's in a war.
It's still murder.
I mean, a noble murder. No, obviously I'm not pro-war. I'm just devil's advocate on that one.
But so that to me was the most interesting thing, because it wasn't necessarily, I'm jealous of my cousin Sidney, I'm getting revenge for Billy or my family. No, I want to be fucking famous, and I want these new movies to be, the subsequent stab movies to be really, really fucking good. I want to save the franchise. So I thought that meta element was the best and most interesting thing about this new Scream. And I think that, I mean, part of me was like, oh my gosh, it's almost a little too meta, and like her, you know, like sitting on the couch, watching him sitting on the couch, being like, look behind you. Yeah. Like there were times where it was a little like rolling of the eye, but overall, I did really enjoy it. I think it's all of these films that we're watching are so hyper aware. That's like the fucking trend these days, you know? Like we're constantly watching things that are, you know, either talking about their past versions, or they're just self-aware. And it's getting to be the point where it's not effective anymore. But Scream was one of the ones that I was like, okay, this was effective, because at least they realized that like the toxic fandom is something that we might have to address here, because it is a bit much.
I mean, the toxic fandom is what doesn't a lot of, it gives sometimes a lot of bad press to movies that don't deserve it. We actually named an episode Toxic Fandom, right?
We did.
When we did the Ghostbusters, because the vitriol that came out of that fan base for this movie, that it was not a good movie, but like it didn't deserve the vitriol that these women had to go through on the release of that film.
Yeah. Same thing with like Star Wars.
Star Wars is another one that gets that a lot. The new one, right? Like the new trilogy, like the absolute hate that this new cast got because it's a female main character and a black sidekick. You know what I mean? Like it's just like all the critiques that this girl was giving on requels is criticizing that toxic culture around, you know, that fan base. It's just like, it's mine, don't mess with it, don't touch it. And it's just like, you don't, but it's not yours. You don't have ownership over these things. Like, so yeah.
And that might be my reason that this was maybe in a way needed. Of course, again, we never needed a new Scream movie. Actually, you know, if this first Scream film like never got any sequels, I'm sure it would be an even bigger film in our like minds and our collective than it is. But nonetheless, I actually think that this isn't a franchise that has ruined itself with the subsequent sequels. And I do think that each sequel has at least something unique that it's bringing to the table. And this one was way more interesting than Scream 4, I'll say that. And I definitely did enjoy, at least in those ways where it went, where it was like, actually, no, these are just diehard fans who want to save the Stab franchise. And yeah, that new commentary that it gave us, it actually was something that I'm happy was addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Even now, after recording this podcast, I still don't know where I stand on like whether or not this was needed, because maybe part of me is also, like I said, I didn't love it. I didn't need it. I will attest to this. My favorite remake of Scream is and always will forever be Scary Movie.
Scary Movie.
It's such a good. I mean, talk about like that is a perfect remake. But I guess I never saw Scream 4, so I can't speak to that one. But maybe last one I did see was Scream 3. That movie was such a letdown that I guess this one you kind of. If Scream 4 didn't exist, like I would need something to like kind of like clean that palette for me. And like this movie would have done that, right? For me.
Well,
so,
it's so interesting though, because I feel like more people are seeing this new Scream than they are seeing Scream 4. And if you are active on our social media, you know that we conduct polls sometimes. And we did 2 polls for the new Scream. Do you remember what they were, Rolando?
No.
Okay, well, I got them. So we asked, are you going to see the new Scream? And 75% people said yes. Then we asked, did you want a 5th Scream film? And 56 people said no. 56%, said no.
Okay.
So more people did not want this film.
But they're still going to go see it.
But even more people are still going to go see it. Isn't that interesting?
It makes sense. I mean, look, Scream, that's one thing you'd always expect from Scream, right? And that's to see like beautiful people getting chased down with knives. Yeah. And it will always deliver on that. I don't think, you go to a Scream film, like at the very least you'll get that. And maybe on top of it, you'll get a fun performance from Neve Campbell. Here, I don't know. Here, it wasn't a Neve Campbell movie, but I kind of think you don't necessarily need a Neve Campbell character anymore. But I shouldn't speak too fast because Neve Campbell and producers have already said it's just like, yeah, we're interested in continuing the franchise. I'm just like, well, no shit.
Yeah,
like, obviously, money talks and the money has spoken. you know?
Yeah. The money placed it as the #1 movie in America. So yeah.
So obviously they're gonna go back to it. I'm curious. Like I said, in my heart of hearts, what I would really want is just a spin-off with just Gail and Sidney just solving crime around the country.
Yeah. Or at least putting like, following people. They're like, oh, that woman's being abused. Let's put a tracker on her car. Let's follow her and let's come into this house, guns blazing.
But yeah, something like that. I think that would be great.
I think that would be great too.
That's the pitch. And you know what? Make it a Paramount Plus original and boom. I just saved you, Paramount Plus. You're welcome.
Yeah. Gail and Sidney saved the day.
There you go. What a title. That's the pitch.
I'm there. Well, what do you guys think? Would you watch Gail and Sidney save the day? Have you seen the new Scream? Are you a fan of Scream? I mean, if you've listened this far and we've spoiled the shit out of it, I hope you are. So ways that you can let us know your thoughts. Please email us, remakes, reboots, and revivals at gmail.com. We're also on Instagram at remakes, reboots, revivals. We are on Twitter at remakes podcast. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/remakes, reboots, revivals. We're active on YouTube also. Search for remakes, reboots, revivals, and you'll find all of our episodes and some videos there. And last but not least, we also have a hotline that you can call and let your voice be heard. And that hotline number is
862-248-2326. That's 862-248-2326. And if you want to listen to all our previous episodes, if you missed out and you can't find them on your library, you can visit our website, www.remakesrebootsrevivals.com. Because I think someone had asked, like, oh, I can't find this one episode. It's like, oh, yeah, Apple can only hold so many. So you got to go onto our website.
There you go. Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm not feeling that great, so I apologize for not being my normal spunky self, or however you would define my characteristics that I normally am. But thanks for bearing with me while I wasn't feeling that great this week, our dear audience. So I guess without any further ado,
stay unoriginal.